Hello everyone, this is Stephen Balch, your instructor for Introduction to Microeconomics at Ozarka College. Today what I'd like to do is give you a little bit of feedback on the chapters 14 and 15 activities that I finished grading this morning. And then I'm going to tell you what we've got coming up due for chapters 16 and 17. Alright, so the first thing is, like I said, I did finish grading chapters 14 and 15 activities this morning. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and look at your grades for those activities and read the grading comments and let me know if you have any questions. If I did have to count points off, I tried to be very specific on why I was counting points off and what maybe part of the question that you missed or what the correct answer is that I was looking for. But if you do have questions after reading the grading comments, just let me know. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Most of you did well on the chapters 14 and 15 assignment. There were a few of you that didn't give enough explanation in your answers, or you skipped over part of the answer or part of the question, and so I had to count some points off for that. And there are a couple of you that are still forgetting to put your name on your assignment. So I've been counting points off for that. It's not a huge number of points, but those are points that you could easily get if you just put your name on your assignment. Okay, so be careful. Make sure that you put your name on your assignment. Most of you are doing that now, but there are a couple of you that are still needing to do that. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about the chapters 14 and 15 assignment. Let's see, the chapters 14 and 15 test, most of you did well on that. There were some of you that didn't do so well for some reason. I have a inclination that probably those of you that didn't do so well probably just tried to, maybe you waited too late to get started and you just had to do what you could within the time frame that you had. But the easy way to correct that in the future is to get started earlier on your activities that are due, and that way you're not having to rush through the test and do poorly, not as well as what you could do on the test. Okay. Also remember that on those chapter tests, you can take those as many times you want to up until the due date, and your highest grade is automatically recorded. So, take advantage of that. Most of you are, but I always remind you of that because that is important. All right? And we didn't have a discussion for chapters 14 and 15 because I made a mistake when I set up the class earlier this semester. I, for some reason, had the same discussion topic for our last set of chapters as for this set of chapters that we just worked on. And so because of that, because we had duplicate topics there, I just eliminated the discussion for chapters 14 and 15. That's something I'll have to fix for next semester when I teach this class again. But I do apologize for that. I should have noticed that earlier, but I just for some reason didn't. And so basically it just came down to you didn't have to do a discussion for chapters 14 and 15, which is not that big of a deal. But if you have questions about that, just let me know. All right, so that brings us to our next set of chapters, our next set of activities that are due. So if you'll notice under week 14, we've got chapters 16 and 17, assignment, test, and discussion all due by Sunday, November 16th, which that sounds like a good time away from now, since today is just the 4th, but it's less than 2 weeks, so just kind of keep that in mind. You've got basically about a week and a half, a little over a week and a half to be working on those activities. So chapters 16 and 17, like I said, are due by Sunday, November 16th. So we don't have any work due the rest of this week. We don't have work due next week, but keep in mind that Sunday, November 16th is the first day of the following week. So don't wait until Sunday, that day that the work is due, to get started. Go ahead and use that time wisely that you have, that week and a half that you have to work on it, and give yourself plenty of time. All right, because in these chapters will take some time to go through and to do the assignment and the discussion and the test. It will take some time. So, the sooner you get started, the better. All right. Chapter 16, by the way, covers resource markets. So the topics that you're going to study in chapter 16 will be resource demand and supply, resource price differences, opportunity cost, and economic rent, which we've talked about very general terms in earlier chapters, but we're going to look at it as it pertains specifically to resource markets in this chapter 16. And also in chapter 16, we'll learn about marginal revenue product, marginal revenue cost, or marginal resource cost, marginal revenue product, marginal resource cost, profit maximization when employing resources. So when firms are trying to figure out how many resources to purchase or employ to maximize profits, obviously they're going to look at marginal values like marginal revenue product and marginal resource cost. And so chapter 16 will explain that process. And also in chapter 16, you're going to learn about changes in resource demand. All right. There's some things that can cause demand for certain resources to change, and that last part of chapter 16 will cover some of those things that can change resource demand. All right, and then chapter 17 covers a specific type of resource market that is oftentimes considered the most important resource market for firms, and that is the labor market. Okay, so chapter 17 is going to cover labor markets and labor unions. So in chapter 17 specifically, you're going to learn about labor supply and some of the things that can influence labor supply or impact labor supply. You'll learn about two effects of wage increases on labor supply. One of them is called the substitution effect. The other one is called the income effect. All right, so you'll learn about those and how those impact the supply of labor, especially the individual supply of labor. You'll also in chapter 17 learn about non-wage determinants of labor supply. Of course, we know that that wages or income is going to be the number one factor in determining, at least in most cases, the number one factor in determining how much labor we are willing to supply in the labor market. But there are other factors as well. So there are some non-wage determinants of labor supply that also have an impact on how much labor is supplied in the market. Also in chapter 17, you'll learn about why wages differ. In other words, why does a physician make more than a teacher? Okay, so you'll learn about some of the things that impact wages and why wages differ in different labor markets. Okay. Also in chapter 17, we'll learn about something that we briefly discussed in a previous chapter, something called monopsony, which is the opposite of monopoly. Monopsony is basically where the buyer has the power rather than the seller. Okay, so monopsony in the labor market, where you have maybe one firm that is buying all the labor for a particular market. They have a lot of power in that market. Okay, so you'll learn about monopsony in the labor market. Also in chapter 17, you'll learn about unions and collective bargaining. You'll learn about the different types of labor unions. And then at the very end of chapter 17, you'll learn about some of the trends in union membership. Okay, so That's chapter 16 and 17, so be working on those activities. Like I said, get started as soon as you can. Give yourself plenty of time. Like I said, if you have questions as you're working through those activities, let me know, and I'll be glad to help you. And that's all I really have for you for today. So enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you.